Hello there. My name is Elrock. Hope you all are having an awesome time today. This game here, we're going to be showing a game that I think would be perfect for any marathon to have for a bad games block. Some of you might know what it is. Haven't seen it in too many marathons in the past. It's called the Simpsons Bart's Nightmare. This version being for the SNES. There's also a Genesis version, but I've honestly never messed with that version. So, we're going to go ahead and start on that here in just a moment while I discuss this game. To give a little bit of background on this game, it's a game I played quite a bit as a kid. Never did great on it because it's a very, very hard game. And as it turns out, it's actually a significantly bad game too. Like, there's a lot of terrible mechanics in this game that just really wouldn't fly in R&D, or at least they shouldn't have. I remember reading up some background on the game later, and it turns out that the game actually met with a ton of R&D issues. I'm gonna say R&D development, but that's just redundant. The original creator or developer basically wanted something that apparently the development corporation did not, and it just became this big mishmash of just total nonsense. Nobody got what they wanted. Kind of a shame because I think this game could have really been something awesome, but we got what we got. So anyway, game is multi-genre. Features Bart Simpson playing through a wide variety of different levels that you have to complete in order to be able to reach the in-game goal, which is 8 pages to complete the game and get your grade. You can go as high as A+. The score is what determines your grade. A+ is not necessarily to complete the game. It's a point threshold of, I believe, 125k, but for the purpose of the run, we just complete it as fast as possible. So we'll go ahead and start the video here. And it's going to be go. Okay, so she knows first we're going to see Bart fall to the streets. Now this game features a screen scroll mechanic similar to Super Mario World. You can press R or L to scroll the screen in that direction, and I always start by scrolling in the direction that I'm facing. In that case, it was right. So we land on a page and we go to a level. First level we go to is going to be this one. There's no real name for this one, I don't think. I've always just called it the bloodstream. It's about the most basic name you can come up with. Your goal here is you want to pop these germs that are essentially your obstacles. They're your enemies. You have two different kinds of germs. You have the spiked helmets. Their purpose is to play defense. If you're trying to kill a germ, as you see here, their job is to get you off of them. And the ones that have I said about the bandoliers, the ones that have the rounded helmets throw grenades. They're the ones that can actually kill you. One grenade actually just completely takes you out of the level, and they're extremely dangerous. They should generally be your top priority of killing. You can manipulate I'm actually surprised that one didn't hit me, to be honest. I thought that was going to be a reset for sure. By playing around these grenades, it's actually very simple to do so. You can just float below them. As you can see here, we're touching Smiling Joe Fish in every chance we get. Because what that does is that breaks the barrier up at the top around the page. By doing that enough times, we get to take the page and complete the level. Pretty short completion there. So take us back to the overworld. Now we're going to go left. One thing I should mention, the first page you always get is to the right. Second page you always get is to the left. Or you can go in opposite directions, but you can't go in the same direction twice in a row. Easiest thing to know to start the game. So here we have our next page. It's going to take us on to a different door here. This door is significant for this run because it's the only colored door you have to come back to twice. This is an itchy and scratchy stage. Plays like a beat 'em up. You can't attack anything if you don't have a sub-weapon. 3 different sub-weapons that you have that are reusable. This one we have here is the mallet. Definitely whiffed there. Small mistakes. Thing about the hammer that I don't like is when you swing it, it actually causes lag. But at the beginning of the level, it's necessary. I'm going to kill that first swath of enemies, move on, move past the vacuum cleaners. The vacuum cleaners, when they touch you, just flat out kill you. Like, they just no prejudice at all. You're just done. Farm those light bulbs for extra lives, which we're not going to need. I'm just doing it just to do it. Fire extinguisher is very, very good. One trick you're going to see me do that you saw there was you can actually extend the hitbox and then turn it. Saw it there as well. And it actually moves the hitbox to the other side. Pretty neat little thing to have. I mostly just do it for swag points, but sometimes it is relevant, especially if a vacuum cleaner spawns on the other side of you. Taking off those enemies there. That'll take us upstairs to get our best weapon, which is going to be, once we take down this vacuum cleaner. I'm actually surprised I was able to kill that one. Take this plunger gun here. Plunger gun is by far the best weapon in this particular level, but you won't find out why until we come back to it the second time. As with any beat 'em up, the goal with any given room is to just make sure all the enemies are dead. Take down the 4 itchy and scratchies here. That'll move us onto the final room of the level, onto the kitchen. There's actually a safe spot you can get here. You actually need to stop right before the phone. I made a mistake here. Now the stove is going to start shooting fireballs at us, which isn't the worst thing in the world. It's just annoying more than anything. They have a sound cue that you can use to defeat them. If they touch you, you just die, so you definitely don't want that. Other than that, though, we're just going to chill here. Be itchy and scratchy as they spawn. Make sure they're not a problem. The reason you want to stay at the very bottom, like I'm doing now, is because those knives that Itchy throws actually can't go that low on the screen, so it's a completely safe zone. You just actually will not get hit. Anywhere, you can also hang out on the countertop to get the same result. I prefer staying on the bottom because that means I don't have to move down to actually defeat them before they can despawn. Like Itchy could just despawn himself, for example. Take out the last enemy here. That'll give us our page. And then I just let the fireball beat me just because why not? Let that paper fall in a pile of ashes. Take out our first 2 pages here. Now, a couple of things I need to talk about here when we go back to the overworld. We're going to have some manipulation strats. So right now I'm looking for 1 of 2 things. 1, I'm looking for a soda can, which is a rare item drop. And 2, I'm looking to ensure that Lisa finds me and turns me into a frog. Get to why here in a moment. This part of the game is actually why the game is considered bad for the most part. The enemies are incredibly unfair. Most of them just hound you like crazy, and you really can't stop them. Got the soda can. Unfortunately, I got hit by the mailbox there. You have to jump the mailboxes to get items, and missing your jump can actually result in a hit, and no one wants that. So the reason we turn into a frog is we're looking for a saxophone. Saxophone normally summons Lisa. I ran away from that kiss. That turns us back into a human. We're going to hit this saxophone. Didn't want to get turned into a human there, but I wanted to see if it would work. And that gives us the page we need. Got turned back into a frog, which won't be that consequential. We'll just take the page. That'll bring us on to our 3rd stage, which is Bartzilla. By far the worst level in the game. I'm not saying it's the hardest. It's just from a design perspective, it's really bad. Now, most people who have played this game know that Bart can actually move during this. In fact, it's basically an auto-scroller, and you let Bart move throughout the stage. What I've discovered in this is that if you hold left, Bart just stays still. He doesn't actually have to play the level. The beam of that I like to go with is the fact that you're going faster by standing still. Like, how is that a thing, you know? Like, I always found that funny. The reason you do this is because as you're moving forward, Bart's actually going to kick down buildings that are in his way. Those buildings cause explosions that kill every enemy on screen, which sounds like it would be a good thing, but it takes time to actually kill those enemies, or to blow up those buildings that will kill the enemies. Why waste the time? The enemies just come to you instead. You're getting the same number and spawn of enemies no matter what you do. The patterns they come in is sort of random. You'll get the same number, but sometimes they come in like, you'll have like 1, 1, 1, 1 instead of like 2, 2, for example, in terms of like tanks versus helicopters. The jets are definitely the least random of the enemies. They're also the ones that you should prioritize when it comes to trying to kill them, because they do the most damage. As you can see, whenever I see a jet coming in, I always try to make sure I'm taking those out first. We have a number of different attacks we can use to get them off of our back. There's no health meter here that you can see, but there's definitely health hidden. Like, there's a certain amount of damage you can take before you're dead, but we moved on to the next stage there. Got shrunk. And I'm trying to think of how I can describe this. This is the reason this game is terrible. This level right here. It's a climb. You have to make it to the top of the building and fight the boss. And it's arguably the most random thing I've ever seen in a video game. When you're moving up, windows can open and drop stuff on you. Their goal is to ensure that you fall off the screen and can't come back. If the screen catches up with you, you just die. Mom throws another particularly annoying obstacle. She's also random in her movement. Sometimes she turns around, sometimes she just completely despawns from the screen. Obviously, you want her to despawn, but she's also not very cooperative. I was actually really surprised she caught up with me there. I had a lot of momentum, and now we're just getting stuff dropped on us. Now, obviously, this isn't my best run of the game. My best run I've ever had actually featured not getting hit at all on the tower, but sometimes you got to show off what this game can do in just a random setting, you know? in most cases, you're going to get hit a lot. You can move out of the way of the objects, but if you're moving at an accelerated pace with all that momentum, there's only so much inertia that's going to happen before it can stop you. Like if you're climbing to like the next floor, for example, you're not going to be able to stop and move. Those ladders on the left and right side you can use to avoid objects and bomb throw, but you put yourself in danger of a UFO showing up and trying to tag you with a laser, which actually just kills you. Kind of got mixed up there. Pretty bad. We got hit a few more times. I still disagree with that one even hitting me. I felt like I was on the right side already. It's pretty garbage. Got another hit. This final section can be pretty mean. Move right on up. And basically all we're trying to do to Homer is we need to get up to him and use an electricity attack that's contact. Make sure he hits us while we charge that as a shield, and that defeats him straight out. It's the only offensive move we have in the entire game, and of course, in that entire level, and of course it's defensive. You can't actually use it. You can't use it to like deflect objects off of you that could fall on you or anything like that. You just want to save the full charge when you get to him. Alright, so another manipulation strat. We have the old lady here. We're going to blow this bubble, have it pop on her head, and that gives us another page. These are pretty important. That was pretty mean. Didn't think that bus was going to show up. Came in way too fast. That'll give us our next page. Now, the thing that a lot of people don't like about this game is the fact that if you don't know how to manipulate those pages to just show up like that, getting pages to spawn is incredibly hard. Like it's unless you manipulate the game to give you what you want, it's completely random. You only have so much control over what you can do there. You can't just like move forward and get what you want. What I did was through the use of random stuff that I found, as well as task videos, one particular task video, and former world record holder videos. Shoutouts to Dum Dum Dugan for that. Was able to determine there's a number of ways that you can actually force pages to spawn. So here we have this stage, Bartman. I'll talk a little bit about this. This is a shmup stage. It's a particularly weak shmup stage because your only weapon is the slingshot, which your shots don't even go full screen. They shoot out a little bit, then they limply fall to the ground. Had a pretty good boss fight there, though. They spawned in with the perfect pattern where they flow down to the middle. Some obstacles in our way here. Trying to think of what else. So, in regards to the manipulation strats, the one involving using the frog to kill the saxophone, that was actually one I found by mistake, whereas the one that involved popping the bubble on the lady's head, that one was in a task that's been out for many, many, many moons. So nothing new there. Nothing new for anyone who's looking for information in this game. So this is actually something I discovered for this stage. These rockets, if you're just flying through the stage as normal, actually can attack you. But if you go right to the bottom, they just completely miss you altogether. Like, there's just no chance for them to actually hit you. Just keep moving like so. Unfortunately, they do cause some lag, but it's still faster than just popping off slingshot shells and killing them. Here we have Smithers. Smithers is a very, very difficult boss. Probably the hardest in the game. He shoots off these missiles that do half your life, I think. Yeah, it's exactly 50%. You have to dodge 6 of them, and then he just flies away. Now, you'd think that, like, well, what if you dodge all his hits and don't die, and he just flies away, you don't have to kill him, what's the problem? Well, dodging those missiles can be really obnoxious. As you can see, I got hit by one there, and I'm now down to about 40% health. Moving on, and we'll see him in a bit later. Big spoiler, you have to fight him again. Same exact fight. This section of radioactive clouds is going to be pretty dangerous. I'm going to go ahead and take all this stuff down. They do damage to you the longer in the cloud, so you can't actually float through them. If any of those items hit us, either the rockets that are firing upward or the small red planes that were trailing us, if any of that hit us, we could have been dragged into a radioactive cloud and we would have died. It would have just flat out killed us. That's why we tend to avoid that. So with Smithers here, same exact fight. Got hit right away. I think it takes 3 slingshot pellets to kill a missile, but wasn't surprised that took a death. It's obviously not the best thing ever, but I generally expect to take a death. He fights really unfair. The worst thing he'll do is he'll put himself in front of you and then fire missiles, and then he acts as a meat shield for his missiles. Like, he'll just take the damage as opposed to being able to hit the missiles. You saw that as an example on that last one there. It's really unfair, but with proper movement and positioning, it can become not that much of a problem. It's obviously not inconsequential, but you can manipulate it somewhat. It's just that if he doesn't put up with the manipulation, it's not good. But that'll take us out of those two fights there. Should also mention this is the longest stage in the run. It's the only one that takes roughly 4.5 to 5 minutes. The rest are all 3 minutes and less. Temple of Maggie for both is like less than a minute and a half. It's really short. Anyway, on to our boss for Burns. Basically, the goal is to just hit him as many times as you can. As soon as you see the screen start lagging and the bullets start, just start floating down. Make sure all the pellets hit. You get enough out there, he'll just generally just fly right into him like so. Fire him off like here. I wish there was more to talk about this fight. If he hits you, you take 19%. So he can't kill you in 5 hits, which is nice. I've definitely had some occurrences where I'll trade hits with him. Like, if I can get 6 hits on him for taking 1 hit, I'll definitely do it. Something like that. Which, I actually thought this was going to do him in. As you can see, the boss meter is almost clear. Thought that was going to do him in, too. And, of course, he takes 1 more hit and he's dead. Hard luck there. Okay, so moving on from the 5th page. Now we get into the meat and potatoes of the difficulty of the game. We've got 2 manipulation strats left. First easy one. This is actually one I learned as a kid. Let this TV spawn, shoot a watermelon seed at him, and you get a free page. That's more or less guaranteed. Sometimes there's a stall if there's too many enemies on screen, but either way, this will take us to page 6, which is back to the itchy and scratchy levels. This is arguably the hardest stage in the game. It's not the worst. It does have some bad mechanics. You can see the jump is still trash. Like it's a triangle jump, and it makes no sense. So here, we have the plunger gun right away, and the big goal here is we have to keep the plunger gun until the end of the level. There we killed 5 vacuum cleaners, then we had to move left. I actually delayed that to show that they wouldn't spawn. I use that as a buffer to make sure I don't get hit by the eyeball. But anyway, yeah, we're still going to basically be following the same formula. Enter a room, kill all the enemies, move on. Key thing to keep in mind here, though, as I mentioned before, for optimal speed, you absolutely have to keep the plunger gun through this section. It's required. And you'll see why here in a couple of upcoming rooms. This is actually something I discovered today, which is pretty funny. So in this room, similar to the last kitchen, there's another hazard that you have to deal with. Although instead of fireballs that are really easy to deal with, you have these giant bubble monsters that spawn from the sink that take anywhere from 2 to 3 hits. I believe it's random to be able to take down. And if you don't take them down and they touch you, you take damage, which isn't the worst, you would think, because you're not dying. But if you get hit in this level, you lose your weapon, and there's no way to obtain the plunger gun throughout the rest of the stage. As I mentioned, you need the plunger gun. No other weapon in this whole stage will do what you want it to do. The hammer is really bad. The fire extinguisher is necessary if you lose the plunger gun, but otherwise it's really bad. Moving on to our 3rd room. This room used to be the most difficult thing in the game because you had to jump that itchy poster there where he would throw mouse traps at you. But shoutouts to Peebs for this one. He's an SNES streamer. He discovered that you could just stand under the door and camp here and just kill all the itchy and scratches as they appear, thereby getting to ignore the fact that you have to make that jump. It's pretty great. Take out a lot of itchy and scratches there. Managed to block that fireball, luckily. Take that out there. On to our last room, back to the attic. 8 vacuum cleaners and 2 of each itchy and scratchy later. We'll move on to our final boss. Because we're just completely ignoring that hammer. Ah, okay. I was like, what happened there? I just hit the itchy really early. So here's the plunger gun here on the boss. So that furnace with any other weapon takes about a minute and 15 to a minute and a half to beat. With a plunger gun, it takes 8 hits. That's why you want the plunger gun. You can kill it in, what was that, 6-7 seconds? Pretty rapid fire rate. It's pretty quick. So for this last portion, this is the reason we wanted the soda can. I didn't get to show it off here, but there's a random spawn where the bullies can show up. It's Jimbo, Dolphin, Kearney. They show up and they kidnap you. And if you use the soda can to clear the screen, you also get a free page. But the page just showed up on its own, and we got really lucky. On to the Temple of Maggie. This is going to be our last section of pages. This pattern is not random at all. It's completely fixed. For the fastest possible time, I actually took this from the TAS. It's the one I've used ever since. There is some randomness to the level regardless, with these devils that are going to spawn. I think one spawns right about there. The times at which they spawn and the intervals at which they spawn is not something you have any control over. You also saw that I scrolled the screen, much like in the overworld, to get those pacifiers to fire. If you're standing in front of those without scrolling, They are going to hit you, so that's why you want to get them out of the way. Second room's slightly shorter. I think there's like 1 or 2 less movements, but it's still a lot of execution. There's like 60 something inputs per room. It's a lot to deal with. To go over what the devils do real quick, if they're to the left or right of you, they can poke you to go left or right and fall in a hole that can either trigger another pop-ups area, or they can cause you to fall. You don't want either one, so just avoiding them at all costs is essentially what you want to do. And that's going to be time. 18-17. Pretty solid run there. I think we got a B-. Got quite a bit of extra score on Bartzilla, but then we lost a lot of it as well. Every time you get hit in Bartzilla, you lose like some small number of points. So yeah, not a bad run there. Got to show off a lot of cool stuff that this game has to offer. It's still, by all definitions, not a good game. Enemy AI is incredibly unfair. The overworld is just gross. Like, it's the most random thing you'll ever see. Any of those enemies that you saw through there could have just been any number of things. I don't think what else to go over. Of course, Bartzilla Climb was pretty bad. The Bloodstream is particularly bad because it can also just kill you. Not very fun to have to put up with. Bartman's fair-ish. I personally think Itchy and Scratchy 2 is really bad because the fact that you lose a weapon means you don't get it back ever, which I guess is sort of Contra-ish, but it's still pretty gross. Anyway, I've actually run that in quite a few marathons up to this point. Some lesser-known stuff, but it's a really, really cool game that I love showcasing because a lot of people know about it, but it's also very infamous because very few people have ever actually been able to beat it. And this is the fastest way possible. Like, there's just so much crazy manipulation and weird stuff and alertness that has to go on with it. A friend of mine once referred to this speedrun as mental gymnastics. In a lot of ways it is. There's a lot of stuff you have to keep track of. Resources that you have back in the overworld if you're in a level. Resources that you need to make sure that you can obtain if you need it, like extra life. I didn't even try to gain any health there. And you can do that by capturing those blue Zs with bubbles. So, in any case, crazy game. Definitely would like to see it shown on a bigger stage, and I hope it definitely gets considered. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time. Take care, everybody.